Now we're going to go up in size just a little bit, and here are the three amigos, Casper and Pretty Boy, who are the two cockatiels, and you can guess that Casper is the friendly white cockatiel, and Lucca, who's a green cheek conure. Hey, Pam.
Hey,
So tell us about the three amigos. It's not that common for different species birds to be bonded this way in a trio.
yeah,
Introduce us.
they all came to us from the same aviary rescue. There was a woman who had a small outdoor aviary, and as often happens with these long-lived pets, she came to a point where her health prevented her from taking adequate care of the birds in her aviary and surrendered a bunch to us. Initially, the two cockatiels were housed separately from the green cheek conure. However, Lucca started plucking himself, and birds will often do that if they are stressed, and it's a form of OCD, if you will.
Right.
As it happens, he was housed in a separate cage, but close enough to these other cockatiels so that he would call out to them. And eventually, the foster parent figured uh, out that perhaps she ought to let them interact a bit more. She allowed that, and the plucking stopped. We have since seen, and you saw a little bit there, that uh, birds, that all three birds will preen each other. So Lucca, the green cheek, will preen Pretty Bird, has also been seen preening Casper. Casper and Pretty Bird preen each other. Pretty Bird has preened the green cheek conure Lucca. So they're all, as you stated, very good friends, and we would like to see them adopted together as a small flock.
So let's start with Casper and Pretty Boy. They're the two cockatiels. How are they alike and how are they different?
Well, what's obvious is that they're alike in that they're both cockatiels. And they share the same age. They're both about 16 years old.
Is
For
that
reference,
old for a cockatiel?
good point. So for reference, we've seen cockatiels come into Mickaboo as old as the low 30s. So I would say that these cockatiels are about middle age. And just like with people, we all know folks who even though a human's life expectancy is in the mid 80s, where people have passed away either much before or much after that particular date. It all has to do with genetics, diet, exercise, all of that. But these guys seem to be on a good trajectory, so I would expect that they would have several good years ahead of them. They also share the same diet. They are on a mixture of um, Zupreme and this other brand that I can't remember right now, pellets. They also get greens, although they tend to not go so much for lettuce as they do for kale and anything with sort of a crinkly edge to it. They also really like sliced apple, and they've um, experimented with oranges where I cut open a slice and they sort of drink from the exposed um, bags, if you will, of juice
Right,
there.
right. Yes. And what about play and toys and flight?
Yeah, so you see the hanging toy behind Casper there. That is one of their favorite toys, in part because it's a foraging toy. You can sort of see at the right angles that there's a Nutriberry stuck into the top
Oh yeah.
fold of that particular toy. So they can use that particular toy to try to get at the food, the treat that is there. You'll also see that it's fairly chewed through itself. So they also like chewing through wicker and just making the thing bedraggled a little bit. There is a bell. And while I haven't seen them explicitly ring the bell, they do like the sound of it. And so that's what they've mainly experimented with so far, toy wise.
And we talked about their diet, mixed greens and veggies and some fruits. Let's talk a little bit about Lucca, who is now playing with the toy and enjoying the foraging there. So Lucca's a green cheek conure.
Mhm.
And do we know about how old he is?
Yes, Lucca is the youngster of the bunch. He is about 10 years old, and conures of his type, again, the life expectancy is around about 30, so he is quite a bit younger. And he also shows it in his activity. He is the bounciest one, if you will, of the three. And whenever we let them out for out of cage time, he's also the one that is more experimental in terms of flying about and exploring different parts of the house.
Now, all three of them fly, right? And they get a
Oh,
little bit of
yes.
flight time every day.
Yeah, they
All
all
right.
three fly, but to different degrees. So Pretty Bird has a wing clip, and Pretty Bird's version of flight is a downward slope, so no gaining of altitude. So generally when Pretty Bird gets out, I hear a plop on the floor and I have to go over and be that human elevator and get the bird back up to wherever the bird wants to go. Casper and Lucca are uh, more flighted. They have their primaries and they can gain altitude and explore more of the house. And unfortunately, they tend to want to go visit with my parrotlet, and the parrotlet is not all crazy about that. So I have to shoo them away from that one bird cage that they seem to be attracted to. But otherwise they're good. And there's Casper sort of mugging for the camera.
I see that. Um, are they hand tamed? Do they get on well with people? Do they step up?
They are not afraid of hands. In fact, they will hiss at a hand to make it go away. That's what the cockatiels do anyway. Um, Lucca has a strange relationship with hands. He will come to the front of the cage as if he really wants to chat with you. And as long as that's all you do, you're fine. But if your hand goes directly at him, he will back up and away from it. That said, if you actually catch him in your hand, then he will snuggle with you. I've had him up on my shoulder for an extended period of time. And I've also been able to feed all of them from my hand with their favorite treat, which happens to be seed. And there you've got a nice shot of Lucca holding the Nutriberry in his foot. That's something that the cockatiels do not do, but it's quite charming to see a conure do it.
Yeah, it's like having tea with the queen.
Yes,
Very proper. And we could see him get that Nutriberry out of the foraging toy, which took a little bit of work.
it did, and that's what makes it fun for them.
Yeah, yeah. We'll work for food is kind of the parrot motto.
Indeed.
How do they do? You said they were kind of fascinated by the parrotlet. They do okay with other birds. How about other animals?
In my household, the only other animal is me. They do fine with me. Don't know about four-legged types like dogs and cats. And the previous owner, to the best of my knowledge, did not have dogs, cats, children around and about. So it's unknown as to how they do with other mammals.
I remember that they spent some time in a foster that did have a small dog, and they were fine
Ah,
with that. So as we wrap up, Pam, is there anything else that you would like to add for potential adopters to know about the three amigos, other than that we want them to remain the three amigos because they'll be happiest that way?
the only thought I would leave someone else with is with their vocalizations. During most of the day, call it 80% of the day, they are pretty darn quiet. And in fact, they're behind me now, and I don't think you can hear them. However, there will be times, call it Zoom, other Zoom calls, or when the sun rises and they want to greet the sun, or when the sun goes away and they want to declare the end of the day, when they will be more lively. And Casper, our friendly ghost in the middle there, is the one that is most vocal in terms of making his vocalizations hearable. So
Right.
just be aware of that. Again, everything is a matter of degrees. These guys are going to be louder, certainly, than budgies and conures, most conures, like suns and nandays, but they will, be quieter than the cockatoos and the larger birds. Conures, I'm just going to speak to Lucca there because conures range in terms of decibels. And Lucca is definitely on the much quieter side of the conure sound range. It's nowhere near sun, nande, or gende.
Right. Wonderful. So on a quiet to loud spectrum, they're toward the quieter end of the spectrum, though not quite as quiet as budgies.
Correct.
Pam, thanks so much for sharing these three wonderful and funny birds with us.